With CES 2024 kicking off today, there was some really cool innovative tech that launched at the event, including some new EVs, 2-minute ice cream, some really cool displays as well. But the big news out of the event was from Nvidia. Now, this launch may not have been that big of a surprise considering all the rumors and leaks leading up to this event over the last couple of months, including Nvidia teasing the super nature of CES 2024 about a week ago. But we finally did get the launch of the cards, and now we know release dates as well as pricing. So to start things off, we'll go for the big top dog card, which is now the RTX 4080 Super, which will launch at $999, $200 below the MSRP of the original RTX 4080. And it will launch January 31st. So about 3 weeks away, you can get your hands on an RTX 4080 Super. And there was quite a bit of performance improvement. Now, Nvidia did compare the majority of these new cards to last generation and the generation prior to that, comparing the RTX 4080 Super to the RTX 3080 Ti, claiming double the performance of an RTX 3080 Ti with the RTX 4080 Super. So that was a bit of an interesting marketing scheme to go and compare against last gen versus comparing against the RTX 4080. But overall, some very, very good numbers on these cards. Overall, when it comes to the RTX 4080 Super, we're seeing pretty similar specs to that of the RTX 4080. We do get an additional 1,000 CUDA cores with the Super variant, but it's still the same 256-bit bus, so a little bit improvement on the memory bandwidth, as well as improvements on both the memory clock and boost clock on the core. So you do get some pretty substantial improvements compared to the RTX 4080 at a $200 price reduction. Now, before we jump into the RTX 4070 Ti Super and RTX 4070 Super, I just kind of want to touch on the RTX 4080 Super pricing. And Nvidia definitely priced this thing at a very specific price point with the $999 price tag, very much competing with the likes of the Radeon RX 7900 XTX. This is now direct competition, the exact same price point for these cards. So now if you wanted to save the couple $100, and at this point closer to $300-$400 compared to some of the board partner variants of the RTX 4080 and go with the 7900 XTX, that no longer is the case because you can just get an RTX 4080 Super, a better performing card compared to the RTX 4080 for the exact same price as a 7900 XTX. And that's the title of the video. That's the exact reason why I'm making this video, is purely because maybe you shouldn't go out and buy an RTX 4080 Super right away. Now, we still have a few weeks, and AMD is very likely going to drop the price of their 7000 series cards. We might see a $100 reduction on the 7900 XTX, maybe even more than that, maybe a little less. I don't know exactly where we'll see the pricing stand for the 7000 series of Radeon cards after this launch, just because Radeon knows they have to continue to compete. That Nvidia products, for the most part, claim a little bit more in the eyes of the consumer. Maybe not so much recently because of all of the existing pricing scenarios that Nvidia has put gamers through. A lot of gamers have shifted over to Radeon graphics cards, but in order to continue that trend, AMD is definitely going to have to bump the prices down on their existing lineup in order to compete with this new setup from Nvidia. Now, when it comes to the RTX 4070 Ti Super, a kind of crazy naming convention with the Ti and the Super combined in one card, we are seeing quite a bit of improvement in terms of memory and overall just core improvements as well on this card. But overall, it's launching at $799, the existing price of the RTX 4070 Ti, and it will launch on January 24th, so a week before the launch of the RTX 4080 Super. But like I said, there's a lot of improvements with this card compared to that of the 4070 Ti, and those lie in an 800 CUDA core improvement on the core, as well as going from 12 gigabytes of GDDR6X to 16 gigabytes, which is a lot better for the majority of AAA games that are being developed and are being continually developed for the future. So that 16 gigabytes compared to the 12 is a nice improvement on this card for the exact same price point. And when it comes to that additional memory capacity, you also get improved memory bandwidth, along with a little bit better memory clock speeds and a higher 256-bit bus. So overall, a lot of improvements on the memory side of things with this card for the exact same price, plus you're getting the additional CUDA core improvement. So the 4070 Ti at this point is no longer going to be in production by Nvidia. It's being completely phased out for the RTX 4070 Ti Super. And finally, we got the RTX 4070 Super, and this card is pretty much locking itself in right between the 4070 Ti Super and the RTX 4070, which will stay in the lineup moving forward. So this card is going to launch at $599, the original launch price of the RTX 4070, and the 4070 will drop down to $549. So for that $50 price differential, is it worth just getting the RTX 4070 Super, which is probably what Nvidia is doing, and just trying to eliminate a stock of the RTX 4070, maybe produce a few more cards, get people to buy those? But for $50 extra, the majority of people most likely are going to spend that and get an RTX 4070 Super. But let's talk about the improvements of this card. Now, where we had all of those memory improvements on the RTX 4070 Ti Super compared to the base 4070 Ti, we don't see those with the RTX 4070 Super. Nvidia is solely focused on the core in this case. So we're getting an additional nearly 1,300 CUDA cores on the 4070 Super compared to the 4070. A lot of improvement there, just raw performance-wise. And we're also seeing a slight boost in the base clock on this card. No changes in boost clock, no changes in memory whatsoever, be it bus size or just overall memory clocks, memory speeds. All of that is the exact same, and it's the exact same TGP as well. So overall, you're really going to see the performance just in the raw horsepower of the additional CUDA cores on this chip. And the 4070 Super will launch on January 17th. It'll be the first to launch of these cards, all separated by a week. So it'll be interesting to see what gamers do. Buy old stock 4070s, which should see a reduction on the secondhand market. 4070 Ti, 4070 should see a reduction in price, along with the 4080 on the likes of eBay and other third-party retailers. But it'll be interesting to see what gamers do. Do they go and choose a new super card, or do they hold off and maybe see what AMD does with the pricing of their last generation, what AMD might do with the next gen of Radeon 8000 series cards? Overall, it's kind of up in the air at this point, but we'll see over the next few weeks what transpires, what AMD does with pricing, and what gamers do at the end of the day in terms of purchases. But of course, CES didn't just stop with Nvidia's launch of the RTX 40 series super cards. AMD as well launched some graphics alongside Nvidia, maybe not the desktop grade graphics that we're getting with the super cards, but they did launch a bunch of APUs today. 8th generation or 8000 series APUs in the likes of the Ryzen 8700G, 8600G, and a few other variants as well. But what's really interesting about these cards is that they're coming with much improved graphic architecture. So the top of the line 8700G of this APU series is an 8-core 16-thread chip, around 5.2 gigahertz on the boost clock on the CPU. But when it comes to the GPU, we're getting a Radeon 780M. It's a mobile series graphics chip on this APU. So for the majority of gamers gaming on a budget, buying a discrete graphics card isn't always the best option. So today you maybe can get your hands on a GTX 1650 for around $150, and that's probably your best option at that price point. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend $200 on a 3050, $300 on a 4060 to get discrete graphics into your machine, plus spending whatever you're going to on a CPU, be it, a 5600X, now a 7600, or maybe it's an Intel 12400 or 13400F with that type of card. But with this chip, now you're looking at pretty comparable results when it comes to like a GTX 1650 with this APU graphics, and you're buying the CPU and GPU together, allowing you to spend a lot less overall on a system. So I'm very interested to see how these APUs perform when they launch on January 31st, just because this could be a really, really good option for budget gamers that maybe want to build a system for, let's say, $400 or $500 and can't afford discrete graphics. At least at that point in time, you can always transition that system over to discrete graphics when you have the money for a GPU, but at least you can game in the meantime on that APU. And of course, Intel wasn't going to be left out of the party, so we did get some launches from them as well with the base series of Intel 14th gen CPUs, so non-K SKUs that'll be used in the majority of, let's say, lower end, maybe not lower end, but in a system where you don't care about overclocking, as well as more of like your mainstream OEM style builds from the likes of HP, Lenovo, and Dell. But the real news out of Intel was in terms of mobile CPUs with the launch of the i9-14900HX, which is a direct competitor to the top of the line when it comes to AMD mobile CPUs. Now, Intel is claiming that the 14900HX is now the fastest CPU that you can put in a mobile gaming system, just a mobile system overall. And they put that to the test with this chart that compares the 14900HX with the Ryzen 7945HX, which is, again, top of the line AMD. And you can see performance improvements, at least compared to whatever this chart is showing. It's a ratio, not FPS. No mention of what graphics are being used in this system either. Oh, that's not really the point of this. But overall, Intel is showing that their chip is better than the AMD chip in terms of gaming. And I wouldn't be hard-pressed to believe that the 14900HX will at least compare very favorably to the Ryzen 9 7945HX, either very closely in terms of performance, maybe a little bit of improvement compared to the likes of AMD. But overall, we did get a lot of launches today at CES 2024 in regards to just overall PC gaming, both on the mobile side as well as the desktop side of things. And hopefully it's good news for gamers. I think there was some really good launches today that focused both on the budget side of things with those APUs from AMD, as well as seeing stagnant prices with a super launch from Nvidia. It's a long time coming. They've been price hiking cards for quite a bit, but hopefully this is a change in direction when it comes to the pricing scheme of future cards from Nvidia. And now AMD will have to answer that call, and we'll see what they do with the likes of the 7900 XTX. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on today's launches down in the comments below. If you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.